Things Fall Apart Context by Yahya Ahwal, Mahmoud Krikshi, Mohamed Elgamal.
In this video, we will be telling you all the context needed to understand the book Things Fall Apart.
Chinua Achebe was born and christened Albert Chinua Lumogu by his Christian convert parents. It was his refusal to take a Western name that would lead to him changing his name to Chinua Achebe. He was born in the Igbo village of Ogidi in eastern Nigeria. Growing up Christian and attending a Christian missionary school, they were not allowed to speak Igbo. The colonial powers, the British, associated it with a pagan way of life. In 1948, Achebe won a scholarship to study medicine. However, after 1 year, Achebe would switch from medicine to study English literature, religious studies, and history. While studying English literature, teachers would often introduce works that they considered relevant to the Nigerian students. Some of these works included Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. However, anti-colonial sentiment that arose after the Second World War was at odds with works like these. Achebe would write Things Fall Apart in 1958. Things Fall Apart was meant to show that Africans were civilized people who had civilization before the Europeans colonized them. And that they were in no need for the European intervention that the colonial powers thought was so necessary. They were already civilized. In 1960, he would write No Longer at Ease. And then in 1964, Achebe would hear about the story of an Igbo priest who refused to collaborate with the British, leading to him being imprisoned. Fascinated by the story of this Igbo priest, he decided to make it the focus of his third novel, Arrow of God, in 1964. Later on, Chinua Achebe would write his fourth novel, A Man of the People, in 1966, which spoke of political corruption. The book ends with a military coup, like what happened in post-independence Nigeria in 1966. This military coup would lead to a civil war wherein more than 1 million people died in the attempted secession of Biafra. When the massacre of Igbos began in the north, Chinua Achebe fled with his family to eastern Nigeria, fearing for his life. Chinua Achebe was an advocate for the Biafran cause. The war would end with a loss for the Biafran cause, however, this would not stop Chinua Achebe from making works to support it and show the Igbo perspective. In 1972, Achebe would become a professor at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. He received numerous awards and more than 30 honorary doctorates. He even received a tribute from Nelson Mandela. Chinua Achebe, the founding father of African fiction and Africa's most well-known novelist, would unfortunately die on the 21st of March in 2013.
Now let's move on to the history of Nigeria. Things Fall Apart takes place in the 19th and to the 20th century in Nigeria. At the time, Nigeria was divided into tribes and each tribe lived alone. Also, at the time, Britain were huge slave traders, but then they decided to ban slave trade. This led to them colonizing Nigeria because Nigeria was a huge center of slave trade, even though it was banned. So they started colonizing the capital, Lagos. Then they went into the entire country and had the entirety of Nigeria colonized, which was made official when Nigeria was announced a property of England in the Berlin Conference. When Britain ruled, they ruled the two parts of Nigeria, the north and the south, were ruled differently. The south were controlled by Britain directly because they fought and they weren't easy to control, while the north was controlled by Muslim ethnic groups that helped Britain control the north of Nigeria. After that, the Ahyara incident occurred, which was an incident where a white man was killed by Igbo natives. Igbos were a tribe in Nigeria, and the tribe killed the white man, which led to the British people killing a huge amount of Igbo oppositions because they killed the white man. This led to an intense rivalry between the Igbo oppositions and the British, as the British killed a lot of the people of the Igbo tribes. Later, the British started to introduce their culture and enforce it onto the Nigerian people, which is an example of hybridization. After that, the British decided to send Nigerian children to get educated in England, which was an example of them enforcing their culture onto Nigerians. However, this plan backfired as the young Nigerians became educated and they understood what they understood what the British were doing to them. So they came back after their education and protested against the British, which led to Britain introducing a 10-year independence plan, which at the end of Nigeria gained their independence from Britain. After Nigeria gained their independence, things weren't fixed as corruption was still present in the country of Nigeria.
Is important. It helps show the reality of colonization because the colonials thought when they came in they would help the country, help it grow. But actually, the reality of the situation is, as soon as they left, people didn't know how to build their own government, and there had been a vacuum. So many people came at power at once, leaving chaos and a lot of corruption. Second, it shows the effects of one person out of the many people who are affected, and this one story can be applied to many people, and it shows how this colonization has affected how many people and how many people's life has changed. This book itself is a product of hybridization by colonials because the name of the book comes from a poem by an Irishman, but this book is supposed to be about Africa and how it's affected by colonials, which is kind of ironic because the book itself is affected by hybridization. And it allows others to understand that not everyone's perfect and how people in Africa are also humans, just like people in the West. It shows how they are complex humans, just like everyone else, and they have their own traditions and cultures and languages. And Achebe also says that even white anti-colonials will always need to understand Africa because of constant white their colonial their thinking. They'll always think of African traditions as weird and different, or and it also tries. This book also attempts to make Igbo culture seem like a normal thing and not other, like most Western media present it as.
The book takes place around the Igbo people, which are a tribe in Nigeria. There are some things we need to learn about the Igbo people, like their religion. Um, the religion of the Igbo people was called Obdiani, that had three gods. The main god was called Chuku, and he was the most important, while the other two gods were called Nidi Ichi and Umu Gabara. They believed that there were levels of gods and that Chuku was the most superior, but Nidi Ichi and Umu Gabara also came after him and they were important gods. Um, the Igbo people believed in reincarnation and that there was another life after this life, and they were extremely religious and took religion to the heart, and it was a very important aspect of their lives. In the Igbo tribes and between the Igbo people, gender structures are also important to learn about when reading this book. So, gender structures in the Igbo tribes were pretty simple. Women were considered inferior to men, and and their only purpose was to get married to men and do as they say. Men had the right to marry many women and treat them as they please, without taking into consideration any of their rights. Women were expected to abide with whatever men say, even if that is degrading to them or menial. But they had to listen to them because men were considered the most superior in the tribes and the villages. Women had little to no rights, and they had a few political rights, and their only work was mostly in agriculture. But they also had some women had political jobs, but they were very few, and mostly the important jobs went to men because they were seen as more worthy, and they were seen as that they deserved these jobs, while women didn't, and that their only purpose was just to sit home and abide with whatever men say. Also, men were expected from women to treat them as their superiors, and they were taught that from a young age, and they were taught that women are the inferior and that men are the superior part of society. Overall, the Igbo society was a patriarchal society that viewed men as that they were above women, and marriage as something done just for women to produce children that would hold the father's name. Thank you for listening to our presentation today. I hope you learned something about the context needed to read the book Things Fall Apart.